Let's get started out right there with Michigan State's 23-6 win over Western Michigan. This was a game, in my opinion, that was nowhere in doubt that Michigan State was going to lose this game, anywhere part of it. Michigan State, I thought, looked great offensively and defensively in the first half. Defensively, I thought they looked great all game. Offensively, great first half, really poor second half. And that's really where I want to kind of start out this conversation, because I think Michigan State overall defensively was just fantastic throughout this game. You had Jordan Hall doing great things, but the offense is where it's going to really kind of dig into how I thought they played. I thought in the first half, Michigan State played really, really well offensively. I thought Aiden Childs was using his legs. I thought Aiden Childs was getting the ball to his playmakers. I thought Mekhi Frazier and Brandon Tullis were great on the run game. Mekhi Frazier had over 100 yards on the ground, which was the first time since 2023 against Michigan with Nate Carter. So it's been a little while since Michigan State has had a running back with over 100 yards in a game, which is obviously really nice to see. You have Frazier and Tullis both scoring touchdowns on the ground. And then you had Omari Kelly. I thought Omari Kelly looked the best out of the wide receiver room, to be completely honest with you. The hype going into this season around him seems to be very, very legit. He had 7 receptions, 75 yards. I thought he was a guy that was really standing out from the get-go for me. And then obviously you have the other wide receiver, the true, in my opinion, wide receiver number one, Nick Marsh. He had 5 receptions, 32 yards, did have a nice touchdown catch from Aiden Childs. A little bit underthrown, but really great play design by Brian Lindgren, which on his own I thought was pretty good, especially in the first half. I thought you really saw him really develop some great offensive play designs. I thought you saw him really allow Aiden Childs to take the offense under control, and you saw an offensive line that was able to get a push against this Western Michigan defense. And it's a defense that I've talked a little bit about in the preview that I thought they wouldn't be that great. I thought that they would be the strongest part of this team, but I didn't know exactly what this defensive line was going to do against Michigan State. They didn't really get a ton of pressure outside of really the 2-minute offense, which that's a big issue for Michigan State, is that pocket presence, is that situation when Michigan State has to throw the ball. I thought that Western Michigan did get some pressure, which is a little bit concerning, especially coming from a defensive line that isn't returning a ton of talent from last year. They did lose a best defensive tackle from last year. Now, you do have to give Western Michigan credit in this game, because defensively in the second half, I thought that Western played extremely well for the most part. I thought they were able to cause Michigan State some issues. Michigan State wasn't able to run the ball as well in the second half, and I also thought that Michigan State went a little bit more conservative in the second half just because they were up by a decent margin. Michigan State got shut out in the second half, so you really have to give Coach Lance Taylor and that defense a ton of credit for coming out in the second half, really stifling this Michigan State defense. And I think you have to give credit to not only the Western Michigan defense for doing that, but it allowed Western Michigan to kind of stay in this game for the most part. I know I said it in the introduction, it wasn't really ever close to Michigan State losing. I don't think it ever really truly got close. I don't think it really got out of the comfort zone, but it could have gotten a lot worse, especially because of how good Michigan State was in the first half offensively. It just seemed like Western could not get anything going at all defensively. It seemed like Michigan State was able to run the ball at will. Michigan State was able to pick up those third and shorts, was able to end up scoring the ball into the end zone several different times on the ground, through the air. Like, that offense for Michigan State was a dramatic increase from what we saw last year. And then really a lot of the same in the second half. That's one major concern going into this season, was what was Michigan State going to do in the second half, because offensively last year, I thought Michigan State in the first half was pretty good. Now, obviously, running the ball wasn't the greatest, and I think this is a little bit of a step up, and I think they were able to get a little bit more of a push offensively, which is obviously a good sign. But that second half offense continues to be a concern of Michigan State, and I think that's going to be something to continue to focus on, especially when you have Boston College coming up this week, which in my opinion is a much better opponent than Western Michigan, and no shot at Western Michigan there. But on the other side, I thought Michigan State defensively was able to do everything that they needed to win this game. They basically shut out Western Michigan. The only reason why Western Michigan was able to put up any points was a really great play by Tate Halleck. He was actually a former Michigan State Spartan that ended up transferring to Western Michigan. He had a pick six in this game. Really late in the game when Aiden Childs wasn't playing, LSU Milivojevic was the one that ended up throwing the pick six, which is obviously unfortunate, but that late in the game, I thought that you really should have given him some time, and you really took out the starters. Again, you never want to see a pick six from anyone at all. But a really great play from Tate Halleck there. And then offensively, I thought we saw some good things from Western Michigan for the most part, especially that first drive. I thought Brady Jones made a couple really nice throws throughout this game. I think Western Michigan probably should have attacked downfield a little bit more than they did. Now, do I think Michigan State defensively, especially the pass coverage, was great? I don't know if great is the word I would use. I think they were pretty good. I think a couple of those passes were just really pinpoint passes that are extremely tough to make. Now, I do think the defensive on those should be a little bit better, but when you're making those types of passes from Brady Jones, and even if Brock Lowry came in and made a couple really great passes, I thought that Western Michigan had some signs there, but outside of really those, Western Michigan didn't really get anything going, especially Jalen Buckley. We talked about Jalen Buckley in the preview, how he was going to be the main guy, especially at the running back position, because Cole Bennett was not going to be in this game, and how Western Michigan's strength last year was running the ball. And in this game, that was not the case at all. Jalen Buckley, 9 carries, 21 yards. Western Michigan as a whole ran for 29 yards total. Now, that has to do with Brady Jones getting sacked quite a bit, Brock Lowry being the second leading rusher on this team, but 29 yards on 24 carries. We talked about how Michigan State last year was really good at stopping the run. It looks like they're going to be at that again this year. It's really going to depend on this pass rush. And Michigan State did have some opportunities and was able to have some pass rush in this game, was able to get to the quarterback a couple of times. There's actually a sack fumble because of that, which Western Michigan ended up recovering. But there's a real possibility here that there is potential for this Michigan State defensive line to get pressure. And also, even if that's not the case, it seems like they're going to be pretty good at stopping the run for the most part. And then you have a couple wide receivers I thought that were pretty good for Western Michigan. A lot of these guys, again, are going to be guys that really weren't well known last year, but you have Braylon Brooks had 3 receptions, 85 yards. Tyleik Williams had 6 receptions, 74 yards. There was really only a couple pretty big plays that Western Michigan had in this game, and you really have to give credit to Michigan State for their response after those big plays. The defense was able to come out, absolutely shut Western Michigan down, and really Western Michigan only had one true serious attempt in Michigan State zone, and it was a field goal that was pretty badly missed. So I thought Michigan State overall, if you're looking at the positives on this game, I thought Michigan State defensively looked really, really good. Offensively, I think if you do what you did in the first half for a lot of these games, I think you're going to win a lot of these games. But if you do what you did in the second half, it's going to be a very, very, very disappointing year. And I think that's going to be truly what is going to be the difference between a bowl year and a not bowl year, is Michigan State's going to have to figure out what they're going to do better offensively in the second half. Because if they get shut out in the second half against Boston College, some of these better opponents, they're not going to win very many games, and we're going to be talking about another disappointing year. And I think Jonathan Smith realizes that. He had a press conference earlier today, basically said that he wasn't really happy with how the second half offense looked. And obviously, I wouldn't be very happy if I was the head coach. Now, he did also mention that they don't think about really holding kind of plays back per se. And I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, because I did go into this game talking about how I thought Michigan State needed to keep it pretty simple. And I thought Michigan State, for the most part, did keep it pretty simple, which I think is a good thing. And I saw some progression in that. But I also think you want to show some things, and I think Michigan State did, in some design runs for Aiden Childs, a couple other things here and there. But overall, I thought that this game was pretty positive for the most part. I don't think there's a ton of hype to take away from it. I think it's a good win. I think Michigan State took advantage of their opportunities. I think Michigan State did what they needed to do. And it's one of those things where you walk away at the end of this game and you're like, okay, like it was a win. Was it pretty? No. Are you upset about it? No. And I think that's where Michigan State is right now, and headed into Boston College. And it didn't seem like Michigan State abstained a ton of really serious injuries. Sounds like they stayed healthy throughout this game, which is obviously really good. And there's a couple of players that might be back against Boston College, which I'll talk about that preview later this week.